Hello, everyone. My name is Azrin, and welcome to this brand new YouTube channel. Now, what I'd like to do in this video is I would like to introduce myself, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about what you can expect to see on this YouTube channel. In order to do this, I'm going to take you through a short presentation. So my name is Azrin. As you can see on the screen here, I run a business called the Calgary Language Nerds. Calgary is a city in Canada. That's where I live. That's where I was born. It's where I was raised. The Calgary Language Nerds, as I said, is the business I run. I teach various languages, and then I have instructors who work for me that teach other languages. As I'm recording this video today, my team and we teach over 10 different languages. We teach them in person here in Calgary, and of course, we offer online classes. Most of the lessons that we offer, at least as I'm recording this today, is private and semi-private lessons. This would be one-on-one lessons or some small groups, maybe with 2 or 3 people. But we also offer some larger group classes as well. I started running this business back in 2016. I post lots of language learning advice on the internet, and I have done that since 2016. So since then, I've posted literally thousands of pieces of content sharing language learning advice. If you'd like to see some of my work, you can simply search Azrin the Language Nerd on Google or your favorite social media platform, or you can search at Polyglot Azrin, and you'll find me like that. I speak 5 different languages. I'll take you through them briefly, and I'll explain how I learned each of those languages. I speak English. I'm born and raised in Calgary here in Canada, so I grew up with English. I speak French as well, at a very high level. I've spoken it since I was 5 years old. This is because I did all of my education in French, all of my schooling. I did a degree in French, a French language and literature degree when I was a university student. And then I've also studied abroad, once when I was in high school, a second time when I was in France, when I was in university, and both times I studied abroad in France. I've also been to France numerous times just to visit friends or for tourist purposes. And I've also been to Quebec, which is a Francophone province here in Canada. I've been to Quebec numerous times in my life. Let's go down to the bottom here. I also speak Spanish. I started learning Spanish. It would have been approximately in 2007 or 2008. This was when I was in high school. I took some classes. I did some self-study. I studied in Peru for a little while. I also did some volunteering and traveling in Peru. I spent some time in Chile. I did a Spanish language and literature degree in university when I was a student. And so this is another language I speak very, very well. English, French, and Spanish are my 3 strongest languages. I speak Mandarin, which I started learning back in 2014. I've taken some classes. I spent 3 months in Beijing, mostly studying Mandarin, and also staying for 1 month of my 3 months. I was staying with a homestay family that didn't really speak any English. The person in the house who probably spoke the most amount of English was the 3-year-old son. And he spoke a few words, and he would sometimes walk up to me and say some of the words that he knew. It was kind of cute. And then I also spent 2 months, as I'm recording this video anyway, I spent 2 months in Taipei, where I was also living with the family, doing some studying. I was also teaching a little bit of English to the family I was living with, doing some touring, things like that. This is a language I speak at an I would say, between a mid and upper intermediate level. And I'm still learning Mandarin to this day. And lastly, this is where things get relevant for you guys, is Gujarati. So my family is Gujarati. I grew up speaking it. My mom wanted me to learn the language. So she was very strict with everybody in my family, even though I'm born and raised in Canada. My mom only spoke Gujarati in the house growing up. And then she was very strict with the rest of my family that they only speak Gujarati with me as well. In fact, it took me a long time to figure out who in my family preferred speaking in English, because I do have family members that have a preference for speaking English, and I have others that have Gujarati as their mother tongue. But growing up, my mom was she emphasized the importance of Gujarati so much that growing up, I actually didn't fully know in my family who preferred English and who didn't. I have this funny story with my uncle. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. He definitely prefers to speak in English. And I was telling him in Gujarati what I wanted for my birthday. And he was like, tell me in English. I would repeat it in Gujarati. He'd say, tell me in English. I'd repeat it in Gujarati. My mom had told me, with the family, you speak in Gujarati. That's the language. But my uncle, of course, preferred English. So I spoken it growing up my whole life. And then in 2018, that's when I started to learn the language actively. I started to focus on my pronunciation because I did pronounce the language relatively well, I suppose you can say. But there were certain letters that I pronounced incorrectly or that I would mix up. And so I addressed that error, I suppose. There were some other small pronunciation errors I was making too that I wasn't aware of. That's also when I started to learn how to read and write, because prior to 2018, I couldn't read or write. And that's also when I started to, I suppose, focus on really cleaning up my grammatical accuracy and expanding my vocabulary. I used to make a lot of small grammatical mistakes, and that's when I focused on cleaning those mistakes up. And I just was lacking a lot of vocabulary. So that was back in 2018. The reason this channel is called Learn Gujarati with me is because I'm still actively learning this language. And one reason for starting this project, aside from the fact that there are very few resources to learn Gujarati, and so I thought to myself, hey, let me actually create some resources. Aside from that, one reason I'm doing this project is because it's a way for me to actually practice the language, make sure I spend time on a regular basis on using the Gujarati that I know. I would like to learn some more languages in the future. I am continually learning other languages. So I'd like to add to this list over time. I'm a big traveler, as you can see. I've been to, well, as I'm recording this, 122 cities. I live abroad 1 to 2 months a year. I'll pick a city and I will go there for a month or two and I'll stay there. I don't do that many touristy things. I might do some, but basically I live my day-to-day life similarly to how a local would in that country or in that city. And I just live abroad to expose myself to a new culture, meet different people, see how people in a different part of the world view the world, what kinds of opinions do they have, things like that. It's also a great way for me to practice the languages that I'm learning. Other interests I have, so I love watching movies, particularly I like superhero movies. Eating out, I like eating in restaurants or even ordering in. I really like business operations, so running businesses is, well, that's what I do for work. I run, as I said, the Calgary Language Nerds, but since I was 18 years old, maybe even 17 or 18 years old, business has been my line of work. I've worked for myself or run different businesses, but also it's a personal interest of mine. And lastly, traveling and languages is another interest that I have. So that's a little bit about me. In terms of this YouTube channel here, and also podcast, by the way, this is also a podcast episode, fun fact. And basically, I mentioned it earlier, there are very few resources to learn Gujarati, very few. And I've experienced that firsthand. When I was trying to learn to read and write and learn the language and improve upon the foundation that my mother had laid with me growing up, but I found that it was very difficult to learn in comparison to French or Spanish or other languages I've learned because there are very few resources. So I thought to myself, hey, I feel a lot more confident in my Gujarati level now than I used to. And I feel like I can start to create resources so that it is easier for other people out there who are trying to learn the language. So that's the purpose of this YouTube channel. It's also a podcast as well. You can find this on Spotify. I'll put some links. YouTube people, I'll put some links in the description box. Podcast people, obviously you're listening to this, but podcast people, I will put the YouTube channel link in the description box here. So the plan for future videos, I'm just going to share my screen and give you a preview. Share my screen one more time. Let me give you a bit of a preview of what I prepared. I prepared some lessons, starting from what I call lesson 0, which is the alphabet. There are 111 slides in the presentation I've made so far, so there is a whole bunch of different lessons. And I plan to teach Gujarati from scratch, essentially. And over time, we will get to some more intermediate level content. So in the beginning, it's going to be quite basic, and then we'll build on it over time. So we have the alphabet, sentence structure, how to read, how to write, some of the grammar. We'll do some listening comprehension. On the podcast, you guys already know, there are some podcasts already recorded in Gujarati with Janvi. Janvi's off for the summer here, and so we're not going to have any more podcasts with her, at least for the next couple of months. But I do plan in the fall, hopefully we can get some more episodes recorded with her. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me by visiting azrenthelanguagenerd.com/contact. That's AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. And you can find my email there. You can find all my social media platforms, everything on that one single page. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk very soon. Bye-bye. Howjo.